Hi, I'm Michael Pranay-Isbell. I'm the manager for emerging technologies for Condé Nast, and I've set up a little project for myself going through the WWDC videos for the difficult topics in 2010, 11, 12, and 13, and setting up Tinderbox analyses of them and walking through them for a couple reasons. One, to improve my own explanations of what's going on. Another, to prove that I know the stuff, and also to help you. If you'd like to get a copy of this, please reach out, michael.isbell@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to send you copies of any Tinderbox documents that I have if you'd like to work on them yourself. So session 219, Advanced Collection Views and Building Custom Layouts. This is where, beyond the basics, they go into the details of how to do it. So they start out, it's Luke Heisterman, they start out with discussing the architecture. Then they go into some specific details on UICollectionView FlowLayout, and then they go into UICollectionViewLayout if you want to build your own custom layout down here. And they talk about, okay, remember that the UICollectionView has three kinds of things it has to worry about, three kinds of views. It has cells, it has decoration views, and the layout owns the decoration view as opposed to the supplementary views, which actually show real data and are connected to the UI view controller. In fact, they should be, or the UI collection view rather, they should be actually here, represented here, and they are not. I should address that. And so this is the little diagram here is the one that shows, so we have a collection view. It implements a delegate, the UI collection view delegate. More on that shortly because of that interacts with FlowLayout so that Flow can get information from the delegate. A UI collection view data source which feeds the cells, just as in UI table view. There's a UI collection view controller, although you can use a regular view controller that implements the protocols. And the collection view manages the cells. Here you have a collection view layout, collection view flow layout descends from that, and the attributes are what feeds the layout and ultimately end up in the collection view in either elements and rect or item and index path. There you go. And this shows here the way this works is that UI collection view layout manages a set of attributes and then feeds them over to UI collection view. And as I said, they're basically picked up in two methods, item and index path and elements and rect. Those attributes are used to actually lay out the view. And it shows here, and these are the kinds of things that attribute tracks. Center of the cell, the size, the frame, the alpha, the 3D transform, and the z-index. The z-index is the order of compositing on the GUI, so that if you have a z-index of 0, it'll be at the bottom of a stack of views, and the highest number is at the top of the stack of views, and the order of the numbers determines the layout. Over here we'll look at the delegation pattern. That's one of the most interesting things because what you want to do is to have your flow layout also picking up actions from the not actions, but overridden methods from the collection view delegate. And the way they do that is they set up inheritance for the protocol. So UI collection view delegate itself descends from UI scroll view delegate, so we're also picking up scroll view methods. And one step further is the delegate, UI collection view delegate, is actually picking up the flow layout delegate, or of course the layout delegate. So that means that when you have the collection view controller implement these, the flow can pick them up. So the layout delegation pattern is called an extensible delegate. You can extend it here, and so layouts can get information from the delegate. That's useful when you're reacting to interactions with the collection view, and you have to determine new flows based upon the interactions. So layout change. When the layout changes, what do? Well, you invalidate the layout, and that triggers a new layout by the FlowLayout class. And there are several ways to call it. If you change your data model, that'll call and invalidate layout, and it will cause the layout to rebuild, including accessing the data model on your delegate again. So it'll refill the cells from the data model. If you want to animate, you can perform batch updates method. That's where you're going to feed a bunch of updates to the cells, and the animation's going to happen in the background, as a batch. And there's a similar method on UITableView. And this perform batch update implicitly invalidates your layout. So when you call it, that's an implicit invalidation. And you can also set a property change in the block, which will then be animated. So in other words, you could set a color change in the block. And that color change, if you started out red and you said make the color blue, then by putting it inside the perform batch updates block, that'll be an animated change. So it'll go from red to purple to blue, right? And there's also an on-completion method, which you can set if you like. And we note it's called on which class? It's called on collection view and on collection view cell, right? Perform batch updates. Layout can call and validate layout on itself. So if you set an item size on a cell, for example, or you're going to want to invalidate yourself the layout well, right? And also if your bounds are changing. So if you're twirling your iPad and changing from portrait to landscape mode, you're going to want to invalidate your layout and re-layout everything again. And you can decide what to do by capturing should invalidate for bounds change, and that will allow you to react to the orientation change or any other bounds layout change. All right, scrolling also will let you do that. So that kind of thing, right? And so I think that's that for here. We go over here. So this is some thoughts about collection view. So you decide you want to use FlowLayout, which is basically any line breaking layout, right? And the first thing you decide is, can I just use a FlowLayout instead of doing a whole thing for myself? And most of the time the answer is yes, you can. So that's what you should do. Unless you're really good at layout math, you should just use FlowLayout. And if you want to do something complicated like a circular layout, it's all out there on the web at this point on the various blogs that host iOS UI collection views. Easy to find. And it notes once again you can add new kinds of views. You can add decoration and supplementary views. You can also subclass and add a different kind of view if you want. You can tweak the layout attributes here in FlowLayout, and you can add new layout attributes, which means that if you wanted, besides center, Z-order, and so forth, if you wanted to add a property, you could have it done. And in Ash Furrow's book, there's an interesting example of that. The code actually gets kind of complicated, especially in the protocol, and especially if you want the setter on the new property to fire off a method, you have to play with some code. So recommend Ash Furrow's book and checking that out. Where apply out layout attributes is called. So apply layout attributes is a method that you write which is called both in elements and rect and item and index path. Yep. So means of vectoring the data, querying your cells to know what to do with the new attribute. That's exactly right. So so the attribute is a new number or something, and your cell's going to have to contain the logic to know what to do with that, your cell subclass. All right. Also here in FlowLayout, you can add gesture support to a subclass of FlowLayout, so you can pick up a pinch or a zoom. You can also animate code to animate Customize the insert and delete animations. Now there are default animations that are going on, but you can also do some cool things. And again, there's a lot of code out there that's already doing this. If we look here, Matthew Martin wrote an example of the code, and basically what he does is show us how to subclass a FlowLayout. He implements a pinch gesture recognizer on the view controller, and if the state's changed, he sets a pinch to cell scale and sets a pinch to cell center for the pinching, right? There are two methods he overrides for item and index path and elements and rect, just like I said. So item is a cell, of course, and you apply the attribute on the cell as needed, and in elements and rect you apply the attributes to the cells. So apply to one cell, apply to the entire group of cells managed by the view. That's the difference between these two methods. And you're going to be going back and forth between those two methods quite a bit. And what you do is you implement a method called apply pinch to LayoutAttributes that both these methods call, and you'll also find this is a common pattern you'll be doing in UICollectionView. You'll be creating a private method that both elements and rect and item and index path call to do their attribute application, I guess is the way to put that. And then of course you're going to probably want to assume they have to invalidate the layout at that point because you've changed stuff, right? If we go back here now, so let's now talk about writing custom layouts. So you've decided you can't use FlowLayout, so there are a number of things you have to do. You're going to subclass UICollectionViewLayout, and you're going to have to deal with all these methods, including the two for supplementary and decoration view. You're going to have to do a custom implementation of elements and rect and item and index path, and you're going to have to grab the collection view content size, which is where you're actually going to be doing the layout. So you have to know what the size of the areas that you're doing the layout is. You're going to be changing all the cell positions, right? So this is, you know, for example, the circular one. So you're going to be really managing that. You're going to be receiving a bunch of cell attributes from your custom layout, and the attributes are going to grab cells and lay them out in a circle, for example, right? That's what's going to happen there. And it notes here, single most important method in your layout, layout attributes for elements and rect. You're going to be getting an array of attributes. And this is the order of operations that happens when you do the layout on the custom layout. First, prepare layout is called. It's where you do your upfront calculations for anything you have to lay out. So, you know, if you might want to take measurements about how many items there are and how big the screen is to determine the radius of your circle, for example. This is where you're going to do it. How many cells? Oh, there it is. Yep. In fact, it talks about it. Okay. Collection. Well, that means I actually learned it. That's good. Collection view content size. Again, grab the area. Where am I going to lay this stuff out? And then you do your layout attributes for elements and rect. So just to review, prepare my layout. Cool. What area am I laying it out in? Okay, lay it out. Okay, so my layout is now live, right? Now the interaction happens. So I react to it, and finally I move something and my layout's invalidated and I have to lay it out again, and then you go back to calling prepare layout all over again. Okay. Then there's another demo of creating a line layout, and I guess he subclasses FlowLayout and sets the item size, sets the scroll direction. To make the layout one line, you use set section inset. So normally if you have a screen this size and you're going to be laying out, say, 3 rows, and say you only want 1 row, you want a single row of cells. How do you make that happen? The answer is you shrink the inset of the view where the cells are being laid out, and the flow layout will automatically adjust and give you a neat single line. You can add minimum and put in minimum line spacing, you know, to control the amount of space between the cells. Find cell at center of screen and zoom it. Okay, that happens there. And invalidate the layouts for bounds change. So changes show as you scroll. So that's where you do that. Okay, that's interesting. And this is the one I find really interesting. Target content offset for proposed content offset. So he's doing a cover flow here. That's what this all is a cover flow example. And when you fling it over, so the center one, the big one in the center, doesn't center exactly. Well, this is how you make it center. You go to this method here and feed it a number that says the cell really should end up here. So and it glides in very gradually. It's not abrupt. It's really cool. All right, and okay, circle-based custom layout. So view did load. Set up tap gesture recognizer in his collection view. So when you tap it, does certain things. I believe in this case it adds cells, and set up the number of items in the section. Set up the cell for item at index path. Just DQ and return the cell handle. Tap gesture. Add collection view for the item. If there is no cell, insert one on a tap. If there is a cell, delete it. Oh, okay, so that's how it does. Just simple toggle. So he's using a touch to determine if there's a cell that he's touching or not. And he has to compute the center, the radius, and the cell count in order to determine where to lay the cell out in the circular view. And here is what we saw before. Prepare layout, get the content size, and then call the layout. And here it shows initial layout attributes for item inserted index path. So these two methods are what are called when you add or delete an item. It's pretty simple. Okay, and that's that. So it's a quick run through. This is all the material covered in this session. And for further info, go hit that documentation. I think we're good.